Good morning, welcome in. Feel free to find your seat. You'll see that there's name cards set up on every desk. You're not in your normal seat today. Everybody's got a little bit of a change up because of the exam. Hopefully it doesn't disrupt you too much. But again, protocol dictates certain things. Shuffle in, and as soon as we have everybody here, we'll get started. Yes. Yep, we put you on the end because we know you're left-handed, so not in your same seat, but we want to try to make sure that you're on the edge still. We got you. Alright, now that everybody's here, I'm going to just go through a couple general announcements, and then we'll get started with the exam. No prelude. All of your materials are already on your desk, so you should have everything that you need. Remember that the only calculators allowed for this test are non-functionary calculators, no TI-83s, 85s, anything like a graphing calculator. The simple solar-powered, over-the-counter calculators, those sort of things will be perfect. If you have a hat, any hats with a brim can't be worn. Sorry. Not my rule. I know, man. That's not my rule. Yeah, you can wear it backwards. You can wear back. If you have a hat with a brim, you can wear it backwards. As long as it stays backwards the whole test. Skull cap's fine. Anything like that's fine. I also understand that this test is supposed to be a silent test. No talking, obviously. Nervous noises are okay. I understand that sometimes people just make little noises throughout the course of taking a test when you're focused on other things. We're not going to be punishing you for that. Try to keep in mind, though, that your peers are also taking this test in a quiet, hopefully silent environment. Restroom breaks. If you do need to use the bathroom, go now. But if you do need to use the bathroom, raise your hand. I'll ask you to come up. We'll talk about it. At certain points of the test, we may not allow it. But we definitely want to make sure we'll get you a break as soon as we can. Again, you have your materials in front of you. So some of you who have been sneakily going through those packets before I told you to open them will see that we're going on a rotating sequence of testing. We're going to have some science questions, and some math questions, and some reading questions. We'll go through as many sections of these questions as we can. We got about 45 minutes to an hour to test today. So we'll see how far we get. And we'll have additional sessions coming up in the afternoon and throughout the week to make sure that we can get through all of this test before Friday. So the first thing I want you to do is open up the first booklet. It should be your Math Section 1 booklet. I want you to take out your pencils, and you're going to write your names at the top of that booklet, and then break the seal after you've written your name, and we'll go through the questions. Now you have all these questions in front of you. I'm going to make sure that I'm reading them out loud to you to make sure that there's no misconceptions or misunderstanding about the questions themselves. Beyond that, though, I cannot answer any questions about the test. So, beyond reading it and answering simple questions about something not working the way it's supposed to, or a question not reading on yours the way that it does on mine, don't ask, essentially, because I just can't help. Now, I'm going to read each question to you carefully. I want you to make sure that you understand the type of answer that is required. If you choose to use a calculator here, again, be sure that it's a simple one. I hope that it is working and has reliable batteries, because if it runs out, we don't have extras for you. Use your calculator wisely. If it's a simple math question that you can do in your head, don't waste the time using the calculator. That can sometimes actually confuse you and make things worse. Solve the problem either using the calculator or using your own reasoning. Once you've solved the problem on your own, locate that answer on the test sheet and then make sure your selection. Make sure you're on the right question. Make sure your answer is reasonable for the question. Make sure to check your work. Lastly, everybody, don't stress out and don't try to do more work than you normally do. This is not a show your work sort of test. So if you're running through things and you don't follow your normal flow, you'll end up disrupted and you may end up distracting yourself from being able to find the right answers. Okay? So let's start with math set 1. You're going to solve each problem by choosing the correct answer, and I want you to fill in the entire oval for that answer in the document. Don't linger too much over any individual question. Hopefully with my reading them to you, that'll help us move through the questions. There will be time at the end of every section for you to go back and tackle any questions that were giving you a hard time as we went through the first time. You are permitted to use your calculator again on this test on any problems that you choose, but some of the problems, again, may be best done without a calculator. Okay, here we go. Question 1. A car averages 27 miles per gallon. If gas costs $4.04 per gallon, which of the following is closest to how much gas would cost for this car to travel 2,727 typical miles? A, $44.44. B, $109.08. C, $118.80. D, $408.04. Or E, $440.40. Car averages 27 miles per gallon, and gas costs $4.04 per gallon. How much gas would it cost to travel 2,727 miles? We're going to move to question number 2 now. When x equals 3 and y equals 5, by how much does the value of 3x squared minus 2y exceed the value of 2x squared minus 3y? F, 4, G, 14, H, 16, I, 20, or J, 50. Again, x equals 3 and y equals 5. How much does the value of 3x squared minus 2y exceed the value of 2x squared minus 3y? Question 3. What is the value of x when 2x plus 3 equals 3x minus 4. A, negative 7. B, negative 1/5. C, 1. D, positive 1/5. Or E, 7. Again, what is x? Solve for x. 2x plus 3 equals 3x minus 4. Question number 4. What is the greatest common factor between 42, 126, and 210? F2, G6, H14, I21, or J42? The greatest common factor between 42, 126, and 210. Question number 5. Sales for a business were $3 million more the second year than the first. Sales for the third year were double the sales of the second year. If sales for the third year were $38 million, what were sales in millions of dollars for the first year? A, 16, B, 17.5, C, 20.5, D, 22, or E, 35. Again, a sales for a business were $3 million more the second year than the first year. In the third year, they were double that of the second year. And in the third year, sales were $38 million. What were the sales for the first year? Question 6. Abandoned mines frequently fill with water. Before an abandoned mine can be reopened, the water must be pumped out. The size of the pump required depends on the depth of the mine. If pumping out a mine that is D feet deep requires a pump that pumps a minimum of D squared over 25 plus 4D minus 250 gallons per minute, pumping out a mine that is 150 feet deep would require a pump that pumps a minimum of how many gallons per minute? A, 362, B, 500, C, 800, D, 1,250, or E, 1,750. Again, your equation is D squared over 25 plus 4 times D minus 250 will give you the rate in gallons per minute if D is how deep the well is. How deep the mine is. And this mine is 150 feet deep. Yes, I am also doing the test. Just, you have to see. No, I cannot answer that question, and you know that. Question 8. The length in inches of a box is 3 inches less than twice its width in inches. Which of the following gives the length L in inches in terms of the width W in inches of the box? F. L equals 1/2 W plus 3. G. L equals W plus 3. H. L equals W minus 3. I. L equals 2W plus 3. Or J. I equals 2W minus 3. Again, we have length in inches is 3 inches less than twice its width. If L is inches and W is width, which of these equations is the best for a box? Number 9. In quadrilateral PQRS below, sides PS and QR are parallel for what values of X? A. 158. B. 132. C. 120. D. 110. Or E. 70. Again, quadrilateral PQRS indicated on your sheets. Sides PS and QR are parallel for what value of X? Question number 9. How many irrational numbers are there between 1 and 6? 1, 3, 4, 10, or finally, infinitely many. Question 10. I know we're skipping around a little bit. I apologize. We missed one question. It had inappropriate material. So we are on question 10. How many irrational numbers are there between 1 and 6? A typical high school student consumes 67.5 pounds of sugar per year. Shocking, yes, I know. It's only going to get worse, I have to tell you. It doesn't get better. 67.5 pounds of sugar per year. As part of a new nutrition plan, each member of a track team plans to lower the sugar he or she consumes by at least 20% in the upcoming year. Assuming each track member had consumed sugar at the level of a typical high school student will adhere to this plan for a coming year, what is the maximum number of pounds of sugar to be consumed by each track team member? A. 14. B. 44. C. 48. D. 54. Or E. 66. Again, if your average student is consuming 67.5 pounds and the track team commits to consuming at least 20% less, what is the maximum amount of sugar in pounds they could consume? Alright, last question for the first math section. In the standard XY coordinate plane that you see on your page, 3 of the vertices of a rectangle are shown. Which of the following is the 4th vertex of the rectangle? F, 3, negative 7. G, 4, negative 8. H, 5, negative 1. I, 8, negative 3. Or J, 9, negative 3. Again, your standard XY coordinate plane below, three of the vertices of a rectangle are shown. I would like you to tell us what's the fourth one. Excellent. All right. Now you will have time to go over this math section, both at the end of the test and with any section that you have, any time, that you have at any further sections. And we're going to skip forward now to the first section for reading. Now for the reading sections, you're going to obviously determine if you have the correct answer. These are literary narratives. This passage is adapted from the novel The Men of Brewster Place by Gloria Naylor, which released in 1998. So I want you to listen carefully. I'm going to read this passage to you, and then we're going to ask a series of questions that basically assess your ability to understand the passage and its concepts. The Men of Brewster Place. Clifford Jackson, or Amshu, as he preferred to be known in the streets, had committed himself several years ago to use his talents as a playwright to broaden the horizons of young, gifted, and black, which was how he saw every child milling around that dark street. As head of the community center, he went after every existing grant in the city and state. As head of the community center, he went after every existing grant on the city and state level to bring them puppet shows with a message to avoid drugs and stay in school, and plays in the park such as actors rapping their way through Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. Amshu believed there was something in Shakespeare for everyone, even the young Brewster Place. If he broadened their horizons just a little bit, there might be enough room for some of them to slip through and see what the world had waiting. No, it would not be a perfect world, but definitely one with more room than they had now. The kids who hung around the community center liked Amshu because he never preached, and it was clear that when he spoke, he listened, so he could zero in on the kids who had real problems. It might be an offhand remark while shooting a game of pool, or a one-on-one out on the basketball court, but he always had a way of making each kid feel special with just a word or two. Amshu wished that his own family could have stayed together. There were 4 of them who ended up in foster care. Him, 2 younger sisters, and a baby brother. He understood why his mother did what she did, but he couldn't help wondering if there might have been a better way. Amshu was put into a home that already had 2 other boys from foster care. The Masons lived in a small wooden bungalow right on the edge of the Linden Hills, and Mother Mason insisted that they tell anybody who asked that they actually lived in Linden Hills, not on the edge, a more prestigious place than Summit Place. It was a home that was kept immaculate. But what he remembered most about the Masons was that it seemed there was never quite enough to eat. She sent them to school with lunch of exactly 1½ sandwiches, white bread, spread with margarine and sprinkled with sugar, and half an apple. When Amshu dreamed of leaving, which was every day, he had his own apartment with a refrigerator overflowing with food that he gorged himself with day and night. The Masons weren't mean people. He knew that he could have ended up a lot worse. Amshu lived with these people for 9 years, won a scholarship to the local college, and moved out to support himself through school by working in a donut shop. By the time his mother was ready to take her children back home, he had decided that since he was already out on his own, he would stay there. One less mouth for her to worry about feeding. And after he graduated with his degree in social work, he might even be able to give her a little money to help her along. One thing he did thank the Masons for was keeping him out of the gangs. There was a strict curfew in their home that was rigidly observed, and church was mandatory. When you're out on your own, Father Mason said, you can always do whatever you want, but in my home, you do as I say. No, they weren't mean people, but they were stingy. Stingy with their food and with their affection, existing that way all the time on the edge of hunger and the edge of kindness, gave Abshu an appreciation for a life fully lived. Do whatever job makes you happy, regardless of the cost, and fill your home with love. Well, his home became a community center right around the corner from Brewster Place, and the job that made him most fulfilled was working with those young kids. The kids who hung out at the community center weren't all lost yet. They wanted to make use of their tutors for their homework, and they wanted a safe place to hang. His motto was, "Lose no child to the streets," and on occasion when that did happen, he went home to cry. But he never let his emotions show at work. To the kids, he was just a big, quiet kind of dude who didn't go looking for trouble. He wouldn't run from it either, though. He always was challenged by a new set of boys who showed up at the center, and he made it real clear to them that this was his territory and they were to follow his rules, even if they needed to flex their muscles. He was always challenged by a new set of boys who showed up at the center. He made it real clear to them that this was his territory, his rules, and if they needed to flex their muscles, they were welcome to try. He showed many times that just because he was kind, it did not mean that he was weak. There had to be rules, and some in their world, some kind of discipline, and if they understood that, then he worked with them long and hard to let them see that they could make a difference in their own lives. So certainly you can refer back to this passage, but I want you to think about the passage as we answer the next 5 questions. The point of view from which this passage is told can best be described as A man looking back on the best years of his life as a director of community center in a strife-ridden neighborhood. B, a narrator describing his experiences as they happen, starting with childhood and continuing through his adult years as an advocate for troubled children. C, an unidentified narrator describing a man who devoted his life to neighborhood children years after his own difficult childhood. Or D, an admiring relative of a man whose generosity with children was widely known and respected in the neighborhood where he turned around a declining community center. Question 2. It can be reasonably inferred from the package that which of the following is a cherished dream that Abshu expects to make a reality in his lifetime? E, establishing himself financially so he's able to bring his original family back under one roof. F, seeing the children at the community center shift their interests from sports to the dramatic arts. G, building on the success of the community center by opening other centers like it throughout the state. Or H, expanding for some, if not all, of the children the vision that they have of themselves and their futures. Question 3. It can be reasonably inferred from the passage that Abshu and the Masons would agree with which of the following statements about the best way to raise a child? A, for a child to be happy, he or she must develop a firm basis in religion at an early age. B, For a child to be fulfilled, he or she must be exposed to great works of art and literature that contain universal themes. C. For a child to thrive and be a reasonable member of society, he or she must maintain some sense of discipline. Or D. For a child to achieve greatness, he or she must attach importance to the community and not to the self. Question 4. Specifically referring to the fourth paragraph, lines 31 through 37, these lines establish all of the following except that Abshu had foster brothers, F. The Masons maintained a clean house, G. How Mother Mason felt about the location of their house, or H. What Abshu remembered most about his years with the Masons. And finally, it can be reasonably inferred that which of the following characters from the passage lives according to Abshu's definition of a life fully lived: Mother Mason, Father Mason, Abshu as a child, or Abshu as an adult. Alright. Give you a few moments to wrap that up, and then we're going to move on to the science section. So as soon as you're done with the reading questions there, go ahead and break open your science packet. Does anybody, before we begin, need to take a bathroom break? Go ahead, absolutely. Yep, now's the time. We will see you in 5 minutes. Reasonable? Perfect. We'll see you in 5 minutes. Anybody else for the bathroom break? Perfect. All right, we will see you then. Back in, get settled down here. This is the last section we'll be doing today. Some science questions. So here we are. It's a passage where we have 2 discussions from scientists, and then we'll discuss the relative merits of the scientific method. Passage 1. Unmanned spacecraft taking images of Jupiter's moon Europa have found its surface to be very smooth with few meteorite craters. Europa's surface ice shows evidence of being continually re-smoothed and reshaped. Cracks, dark bends, and pressure ridges created when water or slush is squeezed up between 2 slabs of ice are commonly seen in images of the surface. 2 scientists express their views as whether the presence of deep ocean water beneath the surface is responsible for Europa's surface features. Scientist 1. A deep ocean of liquid water exists on Europa. Jupiter's gravitational field produces tides within Europa that can cause heating of the subsurface to a point where liquid water can exist. The numerous cracks and dark bends in the ice closely resemble the appearance of thawing ice covering the polar oceans of the Earth. Only a substantial amount of circulating liquid water can crack and rotate such large slabs of ice. The few meteorite craters that exist are shallow and have been smoothed by liquid water that oozed up into the crater from the subsurface and then quickly froze. Jupiter's magnetic field, sweeping past Europa, would interact with salty, deep oceans and produce a second magnetic field around Europa itself. The spacecraft has found evidence of this second magnetic field. Scientist number 2. No deep liquid water ocean exists on Europa. The heat generated by gravitational tides is quickly lost to the space between Europa's small size, as shown by its very low surface temperature of negative 160 degrees Celsius. Many of the features on Europa's surface resemble features created by flowing glaciers on Earth. Large amounts of liquid water are not required for the creations of these features. In a thin layer of ice, if a thin layer of ice below the surface is much warmer than the surface ice, it may be able to flow and cause cracking and movement of that surface ice. Few meteorite craters are observed because Europa's very thin atmosphere. Surface ice continuously sublimes, or changes from a solid to a glass, in this atmosphere, quickly eroding and removing any craters that may have formed. Alright, two very different opinions there. Question 1. Which of the following best describes how the two scientists explain how craters are removed from Europa's surface? Scientist 1, sublimation. Scientist 2, filled in by water. Scientist 1, filled in by water. Scientist 2, sublimation. C. Scientist 1, worn smooth by the wind. Scientist 2, sublimation. And D. Worn smooth by the wind, or Scientist 2, filled in by water. Question number 2. According to the information provided, which of the following descriptions of Europa would be accepted by both scientists? Europa has a larger diameter than does Jupiter. F. Europa has a surface made of rocky material. G. Europa has a surface temperature of 20 degrees Celsius. Or H. Europa is completely covered by a layer of ice. Question 3. With which of the following statements about the conditions on Europa or the evolution of Europa's surface would both scientists 1 and 2 most likely agree? A. The surface of Europa is being shaped by the movement of ice. The surface of Europa is covered with millions of meteorite crashes. C. Is the same temperature as the surface of the Arctic Ocean on Earth. Or D. Has remained unchanged for millions of years. Question 4. Which of the following statements about meteorite craters on Europa would be most consistent with both scientists' views? E. No meteorites have struck Europa for millions of years. F. Meteorite craters, once formed, are smoothed or removed by Europa's surface processes. G. Meteorite craters, once formed on Europa, remain unchanged for billions of years. H. Meteorites frequently strike Europa's surface, but do not leave any craters. Question 5. Scientist 2 explains that ice sublimates to water vapor and enters Europa's atmosphere. If ultraviolet light then broke down those water vapor molecules, which of the following gases would one most likely to expect to find? Which of the following gases would one most likely expect to find in Europa's atmosphere as a result of this process? A. Nitrogen. B. Methane. C. Chlorine. Or D. Oxygen. And 6. Based on the information in Scientist 1's views, Which of the following materials must be present on Europa if a magnetic field is to be generated on Europa? E. Frozen nitrogen. F. Water ice. G. Dissolved salts. Or H. Molten magma. And the final question for today. Assume scientist 2's views about the similarities between Europa's surface features and flowing glaciers on Earth is correct. Based on this assumption and the information provided, Earth's glaciers would be least likely to exhibit which of the following features? Pressure ridges, B. Cracks, C. Meteorite craters, or D. Dark bands. Alright, everybody. You're going to have a couple minutes to wrap up any questions that you weren't able to get to throughout our normal testing time. Take your time, answer all the questions as thoroughly as you can. When you're done, bring your booklets up front, place them on the desk here, and you're free to go. We'll see you again this afternoon and throughout the week until we're able to finish this standardized testing circuit. Have a great day, y'all. We'll see you in the afternoon.